up if you feel like your swim start was really good. Your swimming start. Give me like a medium if you feel like your swimming start is like a medium good. And then give me like, I think my swimming start could show some improvements. Okay. All right. So if you want to start recording, you can start recording.
Gotcha.
My name is Abbie Fish. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I was born and raised here. I swam at the University of Georgia. I just stopped swimming not too long ago. After basically 2012, I retired. And now I coach swimming, and I work online as basically a stroke technique coach. So my goal with everything that I do is just try to help you guys learn a little bit more. Because really, like, you're your best coach. And as you guys get older and you go into the collegiate systems, or maybe your post-grad training, some of you guys might swim beyond college. There's a lot more opportunities now than there even was a short time ago. The more you guys understand and can feel the way that your body moves, the better you will be as a swimmer, and you'll make better decisions when you're in the middle of your races. So today, Michael asked me if I would go ahead and talk to you guys about swimming starts. Obviously, that's kind of hard to do, not necessarily having a pool and seeing you guys doing starts. But what my goal is to teach you guys the different styles of swimming starts, and then be able to kind of see how some people are doing them really well, and just be able to compare yourself when you're able to either get back into the pool, or maybe you can pull up a video of your own swimming start to see what it looks like in comparison. So the education piece is super important. So I'm really glad that you guys all decided to tune in tonight on this awesome Tuesday to spend a little bit of time learning more on swimming. That is really, really great. So applaud yourself for at least being here and making that time as well. I have like multiple monitors going on in my house because I work from home. So if I'm not like directly staring at the camera that's pointing to me, it's not because I'm not wanting to look at all of your guys' beautiful faces. I'm actually looking at the bigger monitor that's sitting in front of me. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see what I have here. So I put together like a little presentation on starts. And as I said, the goal is to just teach you guys like the nice little like buzzword here, how to start like a champion. So as you guys are home, I'm sure you've been doing some dryland workouts, or you've seen kind of the exorbitant amount of videos and other opportunities to just get better at swimming on land. The great part about all of those opportunities is it's helping you guys with your jumping abilities. So really, if you narrow down a swimming start into what it's doing from an athletic perspective, is you're teaching someone how to jump explosively very, very fast. So you have a contraction cycle, and then you also have a relaxation cycle that happens within your leg muscles. So your goal is to learn how to do that at the instance that you hear the beep. You also want to make sure that you're training force development. So the more jumps that you're doing, the more you're gonna be able to generate more power, which also means that you're gonna have a larger output. The more that you can put out is basically in tune to how much you can put in. So if you brace yourself really well for a start, and you take your mark and you tense up well, you're gonna be able to start better than if you were like a limp noodle on the block and you were basically about to fall in. So jumping, super important for a swimming start, and it's a key component to having a really great start. So let's go ahead and do the same thing that we did before. Why don't you guys give me a thumbs up if you feel like you can jump super high, medium thumbs if you can't jump that high, and if you really can't jump at all, go ahead and put your thumb down. All right, so we got average, mediums. Anybody down? Anybody got a thumb down here? Let me see here. No, we got mediums basically across the board. Cool. All right, so now is a perfect time to be able to work on stuff for your starts, because as I said before, you guys can do a lot of stuff right now to work on your jumps. So let's go into this. Why do swimmers need to jump? Well, we're all athletes. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about swimmers, and I had the same thing when I grew up swimming as well, is that we're all very clumsy and we can't like efficiently walk from here to our bathrooms. That's obviously not the case. All of us are athletes. We are training our bodies. We are thinking about a sport, trying to get better. So with that, jumping is a huge component. Horizontal jumps just as much as vertical jumps, so jumps that are jumping forward, are also important with a swimming start. So comparatively to jumping up, how many of you guys can broad jump super far? Go ahead and do the same thing with your thumbs. Thumb up if you can jump really far, medium, or thumb down if you just really can't jump that far. Cool. So we have actually a better average from you guys on the broad jumps, so distance jumps versus vertical jumps.
Abbie, they are lying to you. I'm telling you right now.
Ooh, all right. Now we got a twist. What are they lying about?
We've done some broad jump work over the summer, and it is awful. Kids falling over and not jumping far.
Okay. So what did you do to correct that, or what were you trying to do?
We just tried some repetition. We are very limited in our dry land options in the summertime. So we tried to just set up some courses. We did a lot of cross training with other sports, but once a week or so, we did some sort of jumping things along the side of the pool.
Okay. Well, maybe I was going to kind of skim through part of this, but what I'll do is kind of go through a couple of different exercises that we have. They're just different styles of jump. If you want to note them down, because they all can be done at the side of the pool, and they're pretty easy to incorporate for dry land. So maybe that will help some of the swimmers right now to use. And then also, if they're not anything that you've never done before, then maybe that will be helpful as well.
That'd be great.
So jumping, just like any sort of power output, so something that incorporates a ton of force production where you guys are reacting at a moment's notice is going to cause a lot of stress on the body. Well, the cool part about a swimming pool is water is very forgiving. So if you jump off of a start and you don't enter very well, yeah, you might smack and it might hurt, it could burn, or maybe you create a huge splash and you're that person that's, splashed all the officials. But at the end of the day, you didn't hurt yourself. Whereas when you're jumping on land, obviously you're landing back on land, you have the opportunity to injure yourself at a higher risk than you would going into the pool. So it's important to be mindful of your landing on lands more so than, going into the water from an injury perspective, even though we would prefer, obviously, those nice clean entries off the start. So from a landing perspective, you really want the feet to be shoulder width apart. You want a slight bend in your knees. A lot of times swimmers, when you guys kick so much, flutter kick, you start to end up getting some sort of like hypermobility in your knees, and some people actually hyperextend their knees when they stand. You don't want to land a jump with your legs totally locked out. So think of it as like a baby mini squat is the ideal position for landing. So if you're going to do an extremely high vertical jump at the maximum amount that you can possibly do, so 100% effort, you would want to make sure that you land that softly in a nice little mini squat with a slight bend in your knees. Same thing like a broad jump. Broad jumps, if you don't land in that nice little squat or even a deeper squat, you're most likely going to fall forward, or some of you guys might fall straight on your face, which is not good in either direction. So as far as different styles of jumps, you can do bilateral in place. Bilateral is just a fancy word for you're using both of your legs at the same time. You can do squat jumps, which some of you guys have probably done in dry land. You can do tuck jumps, which are like eagle jumps, where you keep your hands out to the side and then you grab your knees as you jump up in the air. Those are extremely hard, but they're really good for power production. And then you can also do what he's showing here, where you have some weights and you're going to be doing a weighted squat jump. So that one's the hardest of all, because obviously you can change the amount of weight that you're holding in your hands. The higher the weight, the more force production that is needed. So the larger the power output is needed by you. obviously, if you've never done a weighted squat jump or you don't do a lot of stuff with weights, it would not make sense to grab two 50-pound dumbbells and try to see if you could produce 100 pounds of power right now. So it's one of those things where, just like with swimming, you don't automatically get in as an 8-year-old and swim a 200 butterfly. You'd want to make sure that you build yourself up to that. So use your best judgment, especially when you're doing dry lands at home, to do things that would be at where you're currently at with your fitness level to avoid injury. Another jump available is unilateral, which is one leg in place. You can just do single leg jumps, little like baby bunny hops. You can also do lunge jumps. I like those. They get your heart rate up pretty high. And they also work on coordination with a little bit of bounce. So those are some good jumps to do. You can do your broad jumps, as we talked about. If you guys are doing dry lands on a consistent basis, you could use some sidewalk chalk and go outside and measure your distance on how far you're jumping and see if you can try to hit that consistently for a couple jumps down the road. That's actually kind of a fun contest. And you could text each other to see who has the largest broad jump of your groups as well, and make it a little competition, which just adds into the ability to stay connected within quarantine. If you have a box or something that you feel stable jumping up to, you can jump on a box. Like for CrossFit, they have big old 24-inch like wooden hollow boxes. Or if you have a chair, obviously don't jump on a chair that you feel might fall over or lose a leg. So use your best judgment there, but you can jump up to objects as well. And that gives you a nice little transfer to your swimming starts. You can also do single leg broad jumps, which if you are kind of one of the people that's more wobbly on your legs, I would steer clear from this style of jump. This jump gets harder. It's like harder down the pole of things to do. So if you're not super great at the broad jumps in general, maybe stay away from the single leg, because the single leg landing is a lot harder than a double leg landing. But you can do different variations of a single leg broad jump. So you can do a single leg broad jump to a double leg land, or you can do single to single, or you could do double to single, kind of like hopscotch. How many of you guys in gym class, because a lot of you guys are older now, ever used like one of those ladders where you would like jump in and out of squares? If you've used one of those ladders on the ground, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Cool. So you don't necessarily obviously need a ladder to do those styles of jumps. That's working on some coordination because the boxes of that ladder are pretty close together. So you're working on your agility along with some jumps. But you can do something like that out on the pavement as well, or even in your driveway. You could draw a ladder and doing jumps within those, like single leg, even hopscotch, or like a variation of a different style of jump roping if you're someone who likes to jump rope and maybe do like single legs to doubles. That's also good for your swimming starts. If you really want to get crazy, you can do some continuous jumps in place. You can see that what he did here was add 2 resistance bands, and he actually put them around his shoulders and attached them to the ground with some very heavy dumbbells, and he's jumping up against that resistance, which in college, especially track and field people, they have actual contraptions that are made specifically for this, similar to like a rack system with swimming, that you jump against that resistance. It's really hard, but it's also really fun. So if you have the ability for that equipment, you could do some of that as well. And then you can get fun with it. You can do some combination jumps. You can see here how he's starting at a height and he's going to jump down. He could probably do a little bit of hopscotch. He could go into a broad jump. He could go into a massive vertical jump. But you can get more interesting than just standing in place and saying, hey, I'm gonna jump as far as I can right now, and now I'm done. So you can make it fun, and you can mix in different styles of jumps. So as far as the key takeaways on the jumps are concerned, one of the main things is the horizontal and vertical motions of different jumps transfer directly to your swimming starts. But one thing that's often overlooked with swimming, and sometimes within different coaches, is that the vertical jumps as well, so the ones that are going up, are also directly transferred to your walls. So how many of you guys feel like when you push off of a wall, you're really actually pushing against something and generating some power. Go ahead and put your thumb up if you feel like I feel really fast off of a wall, medium, or like, we got a couple people changed as they thought about it. So we've got some mediums. We got like halvesies. Is halvesies like better than medium, but not quite good? All right, cool guys. All right, so cool. So just, I feel like for me, I'm the type of person that likes to understand the whys. So if someone is like, hey, go do 5 sets of 10 broad jumps, and I don't understand why that makes sense, I'm gonna second guess that. So if you're outside doing some jumps, or you're doing jumps in dry land and you're not you don't necessarily understand why they're there, I'm letting you know that they're helping you with your starts and also with your turns, which are 2 key components to having a great swimming race. So let's go into the technique of starts. How many of you guys actually knew that there is 30 different starting styles? It's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Yeah, I got a universal thumbs down. Super cool. All right, so that's the cool part about swimming technique, is there's so many different ways to do something well. There's definitely a way that's like seen, tried and true, and maybe, you know, that's like what an Olympian is doing, and then someone else emulates that and it gets you to that next level. But at the end of the day, when you're on the top of the block, you have 2 different ways that you can set up your body. You have 3 different ways that you can move your weight, and you have 5 different ways that you can move your arms. So if you think about, you know, the start for a relay where you throw your arms backwards, that's an arm route, versus on a regular start, you could throw your arms forwards. You could swing them all the way around to go forwards. But if you multiply all that out, you have 30 different styles that you can choose from for your swimming starts. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up again if you're using your arms at all, or you believe that you're using your arms at all during your swimming start. Cool. And go ahead and see if you guys can move back from your camera. Go ahead and show me what you guys think you're doing on your swimming start. So are you throwing them forward? Are you swinging them around? What do you think you're doing? So we got some backwards and forwards. Ooh, we got the butterfly start over here. Cool. All right, so actually, comparatively to like 4 people that I'm seeing at the bottom of the screen, pretty much all of you guys are doing some sort of different motion on your swimming starts. So you're aiding to what I'm saying here, where there's so many different starting styles. So yeah, let's go into that. So there's basically 2 different types of setups. There's just the old school setup where people would put both of their feet at the tops of the blocks. From swimming history, this was like in the early 2000s and even the 1990s, where both of the swimmers' feet are at the front of the blocks with all 10 toes curled over. Now, I'm sure you guys all universally do a track start, right? Does everyone do a track start, feet separated? Cool. So this split stance position is there for a reason. It's basically how you load your weight. So which one of you guys, if you start with your right foot forward, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. How many right foot forward people do we have? Cool. Any left foot forward people? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Okay. So whatever foot that you're putting forward right now, I want you to give me a thumbs up if that's the foot that you would go and kick a soccer ball with. And if you don't know, go ahead and pretend like you're going to kick a soccer ball and figure out which one you would kick it with. Cool. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up again so I can see who responded. Who's good? Awesome. Okay. So that's really good, because at the end of the day, the front foot that you have forward, you want it to be your most dominant, more dominant foot. So you want it to be the one that you would react with to kick a soccer ball or do something. It's the one that you're more comfortable with, because that one does more for you in a split stance start than it does comparatively to the back foot. So why is that the case? Well, this page has a lot of things on it, but basically at the end of the day, what it boils down to is the forces that are produced on the block. So when you're doing just the two-footed feet on the front of the block versus your split stance start, the split stance start can generate a higher force output because it's happening, that jump is actually happening for a longer duration and time. So if you think about it, when we talked about all those different jumping styles just a few minutes ago, all those different jumping styles have either your legs moving at one time, so both legs jumping up, or maybe you're doing one leg jumping and then the other leg jumping. So you want to think about a track start as one jumps and then the other. So you have two different opportunities to generate a lot of force versus at a double-footed at the front of the block start, you're jumping with both legs at the same time. So one of the key components to having a great start, especially nowadays, is using your arms. And as you guys all proved, all of you guys are doing different things with your arms. So if we're going to go forward in the pool and we're going to jump off the blocks, it makes the most sense for our arms to be going in the motion that we are moving. But a lot of times you see swimmers that bring their arms backwards before they bring them forward. So they like swing them back and then they bring them forward. So that is not necessarily the fastest type of start. If you know that you're doing that, a lot of times that's like a knee-jerk reaction because you're using your feet and your legs to go that way and your arms are facing your feet. So they basically want to swing back like a butterfly pole before you swing them forward. Out of all different arm starting styles, the butterfly start is what I call it, is where you take your arms from the front of the block and you swing them back towards your legs, but then they come around and recover through a butterfly recovery, is actually the fastest start out there. It's the hardest one to do. So how many of you guys have heard of Brad Tandy? Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you've heard of who Brad Tandy is. Anybody heard of him? Not a single person? All right, we're gonna do some swimming videos. Let me pull this up real quick. So Brad Tandy is a South African Olympian. He's known for having one of the craziest and also ugliest swimming starts, but it's super fast and he enters and recovers really well. So he's kind of like on an extreme, but I want to show you guys what it looks like so you can see what a true butterfly start is.
I have always felt if you know what you're going to do.
All right, so this is Brad at the 2016 Olympics. He's right here. You can see that his setup is nothing different than like what a regular track start would look like. He's got his front foot with his toes over the front of the block, both hands grabbing onto the block, back foot's up on his wedge. And the main thing that you want to notice is that, yes, part of his body is coming backwards, but the entire time Brad is actually moving his body forward. So I'm going to go ahead and just play this so you guys can see it. And then we'll go down into slow-mo where you can see kind of the phases here. So he comes down to the front of the block. And the second thing is he engages his arms. So you can see here how his tricep muscle is really popped out. And you can also see how his forearm and his back leg is contracted. And then from there, when he throws his arms through a butterfly start, he actually throws them backwards around. So he swings them around and then they come up above his head through like a really intense butterfly recovery. His head's looking forward. So this is where like the body alignment is kind of all out of whack. But his recovery from that position, which is an upside down, pretty much just like a U, is really clean by the time that he swings his arm around, that he gets in to the pool at like a perfect entry. You see the fingertips there, nice clean entry, and dives in with a really high velocity. So another really good video is this one from the Race Club. So if you Google Brad Tandy on YouTube, you can find these exact videos. where you can see kind of how aggressively Brad is using his arms. I'm not promoting saying that everyone needs to do this style of start, but I'm wanting you guys to understand that that butterfly, full butterfly recovery is what he's doing in the air before his hands actually enter into the water. Is this playing like well for you guys without any sort of delay? Like, is it okay?
Looks good here.
Okay, cool. So this is a true butterfly start. So one thing that I skipped was why you have like your dominant foot forward and your less dominant foot backwards. So when you use a wedge, you guys, as you saw on that last picture of Brad, only like the base of his toes were on the wedge. So when you're looking at surface area, you have a smaller surface area on your less dominant foot making contact with the block versus your front foot has your entire foot touching the front of the block. So it has the ability to generate more force just because there's also more contact there. But if you think about it, when you are doing a start that's a track start, your back foot is the first thing that fires. So your back foot goes first, that's number one. And for the most part, it extends straight and it comes up. And there's an instance where your back foot is in the air and your front foot is still hanging out. So that's why I said before, you have one foot that fires first and then another one that goes second. So you're pretty much doing a single leg jump off the block because there's a brief part on the block where you have to balance on your dominant foot. And so that's why, another reason, you have your dominant foot forward, because I wouldn't feel very good. I'm a right dominant all the way down on my left foot on the front of the blocks, just because I don't know if I could hold my balance. So as far as the butterfly starts are concerned, they are the hardest. They require the most body movement. They're not for everybody. So that's why I was saying like this start isn't something that I'm wanting all of you guys to like do as soon as you get back to the pool. Because the biggest thing is making sure that you swing your arms all the way through that butterfly stroke and into a streamline that you enter well. A lot of you guys won't actually be able to swing your arms fast enough to get into a streamline that you're going to enter either like Superwoman or Superman, or you're going to miss your streamline and then you're going to go like into the opposite lane if you don't get your streamline locked in time. So the other style, major arm starting style and different start, is what I call a slingshot start, which one of the boys, I don't know which one of you was on here, was showing that motion that you bring your elbows up and then you bring them around. So the main difference between the butterfly start and the slingshot start is how far your arms have to travel. So in a butterfly start, your arms have to travel like a very full, large circumference of a circle. And in a slingshot start, you basically cut that radius in half. So your arms have to travel less of a distance. So you take out you keep the time the same, obviously, that it is for you to start, but you make your arms travel less, which means that you get a better guarantee that you're going to hit a solid streamline. So Nathan Adrian is one of my favorite examples of a guy who has a really nice slingshot start. How many of you guys have seen Nathan race, or you know who Nathan is? Cool. He's super fast. So let's look at one of his starting styles. Okay, so Nathan, this is Nathan at the Olympic Training Center. So you can see here how when you look at Nathan's setup, his setup is not much different than Brad's. There's a bend in his back leg. You can see here just the toes of his back foot is actually on the block. His full front foot is on the front of the block. So that's where we have a little bit of a difference in our, large difference in contact with the block. The only thing that's different in maybe Nathan's compared to Brad's is where his elbows point. His elbows are pointing backwards. So you have the opportunity to point your elbows backwards, and you can also point them out to the side in your starts. He's choosing to point them behind him. From there, as he jumps forward, you can see his back foot raises up. Here's a balancing moment on that block where he has one foot making contact, but the other foot is in the air. And what he does is he brings those elbows up, similar to Brad, but instead of having a straight arm, his elbows are bent. So he has a slingshot start where he's actually throwing his arms around his head to get into a nice streamline up top with a great solid entry. So one of the biggest things, and probably a lot of you guys have heard this, is not to lift your head up off the block, because obviously the higher you get up, so the more you jump up, means that the more you have to recover as you go down. So if you're looking forward, it's harder to ensure that you're going to have a great entry, because your whole body follows wherever you're looking. So even though Nathan is looking forward, it's very different than looking up and also creating a big arch in your back like we saw with Brad. So let's do another one, because that's not one of Nathan's best starts. So Nathan is here in lane 5. So there's a good depiction of what it looks like when you don't have a wedge. I would always recommend that if you guys have blocks that have wedges, use a wedge. And if you don't have blocks that have a wedge, pretend like there is a wedge there. So put your foot in the same position as it would be on the wedge, even though you don't have one. So let's see. So as Nathan jumps off that block, you can see he lifts his head up, he gets his leg up really high, and then you can see his elbows recovering around his head as he's shooting them forward. We can actually play that back at a slower speed. So his slingshot is just a much smaller circumference of a circle comparatively to Brad's, but he recovers really, really well and gets those fingertips in first. So I'll actually go ahead and just drop this into the chat so you guys can pull it up as well if you want to take a look at that video. Plus, I'll show you the other one. And this one. And this one. All right, so all those different starts are in the chat if you guys want to copy and paste them, so you can look at them afterwards. So one of the main things that we haven't talked about entirely is setup. So it's really important that you're on the block, that you have a nice straight line. So I use this picture with this girl here. You can see that she's just kind of like hunched over, like her actual knee is in her tricep right now. From a force production or a power production standpoint, she's like too curled up and too crunched that she's not going to be able to generate a ton of power. So with jumping, hopefully most of you guys understand that there is the ability to load your muscles too much. So if you get really, really tense on the block, so you're really pulling back on the block, or maybe you're super nervous and you got all those butterflies, there's a level of that can be too much and it can actually hinder you. So because she's basically curled over on her back, she's really, really crunched up, that she's actually going to hinder her ability to jump well. So having a great setup, if you ever see a picture of yourself on the block, you want to draw like a 45-degree angle and see if your bum is here, followed by your back, followed by your shoulder, followed by your head. So you want to see that straight line. If you don't see that straight line, one of the main things you want to look at is the back knee. And if your back knee is really, what happened? If your back knee is really bent too much, you want to work on opening that up. And what I've found with people who are breaststrokers is a lot of time your guys' hamstrings, your backs of your thighs are really tight, that it's harder to stand up with more of a straight leg if you have tight hamstrings comparatively to someone who doesn't. So check your guys' start setup. If you have a picture of yourself on the blocks, you want to draw a 45-degree line. And if you can do that, that means your setup's looking pretty good. If you can't, then you want to try to mess with your back leg to see if you can get that 45-degree angle. So as I've said already, the difference between the butterfly start and the slingshot start is what's happening with the arms. Everything else is the same. So your your feet on the block are at the same place. As far as what happens after the beat comparatively with your front foot and your back foot, it's the same. It's really just what happens with the arms. So I like this picture of all these guys down here doing way different starting styles. I'm not really sure what this one is, but it looks like hypermobile shoulders to me. This guy's in a slingshot, and this one went for a more traditional start where he didn't use his arms at all. So as far as key take-home points for swimming starts, in order to correct your entry or make a better entry, a lot of that can be changed with how you're standing on the block. So if you're someone who's entering where you know, like, hey, my splash is pretty big, or, you know, I'm hitting my right arm kind of weird, or I'm entering at an angle, all of that is happening based off of how you're standing on the block. Mostly everyone doesn't really use their arms on the blocks as they think that they do. So what will be really good for you guys to do is find a video after this and look at your arms comparatively to what you just saw and see what you're doing compared to Olympians. All but one person in a couple of our videos had their elbows pointing to the sides. I'm a big fan of how Nathan sets up his elbows. I like how he sets his elbows up facing towards the back. It just like engages your bicep more. So that's one thing to note when you're on your setup, whether you're over here with your elbows out or having your elbows back. So let's go ahead. I have everybody stand up. So go ahead and stand up and find a little bit of a space between wherever you are. And we're gonna work on our setups real quick. So what I want you guys to do is put your dominant foot forward that you would have on the block, and then put your back foot about like 1.5 feet behind that. So find like 1.5 feet, which is like 18 inches. And I want you guys to be able to hang out here. So everybody should be balanced enough where you feel like you could stand here in this split stance and not have any sort of balance issues. You could grab something if someone threw something towards you, like you just want to be able to hang out. Next thing to do is I want you guys to take your fists, put them together, and put them between your legs to make sure that there's a space between your legs. So put them in between your inner thighs, make sure you have enough space, and if you don't, go ahead and step one of those feet out a little bit wider, so that way you have 2 fists distance between your upper legs. Cool, so that's step 2. So step 3 is then taking our back foot, and instead of letting it lay flat, let's go ahead and lift the back foot up. So lift your heel up like you have a wedge behind you. So keep your fists, all that jazz, but make sure you have a wedge. And now we're in our official starting stance on the block. So when you guys get up on a block at a meet, this is the very first 3 things that you will check. You'll check front foot, you'll check back foot, you'll check distance, and then you'll be ready for setup. I'm a big proponent of when you're on the blocks to lean over. So go ahead and just lean over and wait for the take your mark. It's pretty hard being that person that's standing up to then hearing the take your mark. So it's just better to be kind of ready for whenever that's going to happen. So the next part of this is our arms. So let's have everybody pretend like you have a block. You're gonna go down to your take your mark position, and I want you to lean backward like an inch. So just lean back about an inch so you feel a little bit of your weight shift to your back foot, okay? Once you do that, you can stand back up so I know who has figured that out. Cool. So there's a big difference in starting styles. Let me see if I can make this so you guys can see. If you're here, okay, and your back foot is pretty bent versus here where your back foot is way too bent. We're gonna go this way. So here versus here. So this position is totally dictated by your back knee. So however bent your back knee is how low your butt goes, and however unbent your back knee is how high your bum goes. So everybody try that again, and go ahead and mess with your back foot a little bit, feeling the way that your butt moves up and down. depending on how bent that knee is. Perfect. So you want the back leg to be more unbent than you would think. So you don't want to have like a really extreme angle on your back knee. So final part of the start, once you find that knee positioning with your bum up and your head at the lowest point, is either to swing the arms back through a butterfly stroke or swing the elbows up over into a streamline through a slingshot. So everybody try both a butterfly with your arms, meaning your legs in the split stance, and also a slingshot. So try one of each. Good. All right. So if any of you guys are losing your balance, okay, that means we want to go back to our setup, because that if you lose your balance doing this on land, it's going to be super hard and you're going to enter really awkwardly while you go into the water. So if you're falling over now, here's the perfect chance for you guys to work on this out of the water, so that way when you get back to the pool, you can do it in the water. So as far as timing is concerned, since I said that butterfly start, the full arm stroke is the hardest to do. You want to try to throw your arms all the way through a butterfly stroke in 1 second. So let's have everybody retry that. Throw your arms as fast as you can through your butterfly start, trying to throw the arms less than a second from start to finish. So you'll be down here, take your mark, throw, and try to throw and lock into a streamline in less than 1 second. Good. All right, this next one, I'm going to tell you guys. So I'll say take your mark, and then you guys can all go. So have everybody set up. All right, swimmers, take your mark. Go. Good. Let's do another one. So everybody set up. Take your mark. Go. Good. Let's do one more. So one more. Really try to throw your arms as aggressively as you can. There is no sort of like reaction to this at all. You can jump if you want, but what I really am wanting to get you guys to understand is feeling that split stance. So having 2 feet and an uneven surface between the two of them, and throwing the arms, what that does to the body, it should be generating some momentum. Your body should be jolting and kind of moving through either a butterfly or a slingshot. So you want to use those arms just like you would in a relay start to generate speed. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to use them. So let's do one more, everybody. Take your mark. Go. Good. All right. So let's go ahead and, can I unmute them, Michael, or can they unmute themselves?
I believe they can unmute themselves.
Are you guys able to unmute yourselves?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, everybody unmute yourself. Pretend like this is an actual conversation. Cool beans. All right, so go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you lost balance on any of those. Awesome. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you actually felt like you were generating some speed on some of those. What about power? So how many of you guys felt like you were really strong through that? And how many of you guys were actually remembering that very last part of the start means you have to hit a streamline and you've got to hit a lock? Because there's a big difference between jumping and ending like this versus jumping and ending in a nice locked streamline. That's not Superwoman. Who ended up in a lock? Cool. So what I would like to leave you guys with is I would love to challenge you guys to do either 5 butterfly starts or 5 sling.
Mom, you're ignorant. I had it.
Whatever that would be every day until whenever your guys' quarantine is done. I think it might be different than mine. Or you get back to the pool. So you work on your balance, you work on your start setup, and you're also working on having a super clean entry. So 5 won't take you too long. It might take you 30 seconds. But it's really good to also work on that reaction time. A couple of you guys were pretty delayed after I said go. So it's as quick as you possibly can after you hear the beep. So working reaction time is possible to do on land, just like you are doing essentially on land, but going into the water from the pool. So does anybody have any questions? And if you do, raise your hand, I'll call on you and I can answer any questions that you have. Not a single person has a question? This is unbelievable. You don't even like want to know if I have a pet? Or like what I do outside of swimming?
What's your favorite color?
Purple. It's very neutral. Any other questions? Any questions pertaining to swimming starts? Do you guys all feel like you learned something? Like, do you feel like this makes sense and you feel like you understand the difference between the two big starting styles and using your arms?
Abbie, would you change your setup for, let's say, breaststroke versus a 50 free because of the depth?
Yeah, I mean, but it depends on how good the pullouts are. So I'm not sure, like, in regards to like the level of swimmer, but like, yeah, the higher, more elite senior swimmers, if I want to make sure that they really amplify the length of their pullout, then I might have them dive in, make their entry point a little deeper. But as far as setup is concerned, I wouldn't necessarily change the setup. I would probably change how high the back foot goes. So just like the angle of entry via how high you kick your back foot up. That the video that I put on there, I think it's the first one in the chat for you guys, that's of Nathan Adrian's start. It's pretty crazy how high he kicks his back foot up from the block comparatively to other swimmers. So basically the height that the back foot comes up, the steeper the entry can be, which means that the depth can change. So you want to have a little bit of like a donkey kick is what I call it. So when I work with my swimmers on that, I'll have them think about something that, like, whether it might be an annoying little brother or an annoying little sister, something that bothers you. And when you're on the block, you want to try to kick that as basically as high and as far away from you as possible with your back foot. And I've seen some pretty good results with people having annoying little brothers and annoying little sisters. Anybody else have any other questions? No? You guys are a quiet bunch. All right.
Nicole's got one.
Oh, okay, Nicole.
How do you prevent yourself from like slipping off the block?
Solid question. How many of you guys have slipped? Yeah, it's a rough day, right? Like it's like kind of like, oh, when you enter the water. Everyone's done it, so that's something to take note, and that's not abnormal to slip. But what I would do, especially as you're getting to like your higher races, definitely do starts and warm up. That always helps. So make sure that you're acclimating to whatever blocks that you're using. I would also use a towel. So if you guys walk up with a parka or a towel or something to the blocks, if you have the opportunity to wipe down your block prior to your heat, this is obviously not like something you can do all the time. That really helps with slipping. But slipping from a balance perspective, working on your feet. So working on being balanced with the back foot kind of perked up and the front foot down, and then also grabbing onto that block for some leverage. Using your arms, like everything we've just talked about, will help to ensure that you're not off balance, or maybe you're pulling with one arm more than the other, so that you have just a lower probability of slipping. I can't like guarantee you would never slip again, but if you do all of those things, you will lower that probability of that happening. Any other questions? Everybody feel like your start's gonna get better? Yeah, there we go. Cool.
Thank you for yelling at Nora for using the wrong foot, because she's been hearing that from me for years and refuses to listen. It does make a big difference if you have your dominant foot forward. It really will allow you guys to balance better. I mean, if you want to balance on your non-dominant foot, go ahead, but it will make your start better if your dominant foot's on the blocks.
Well, cool. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, that's all I had prepared for you today. Yeah, I mean, do you want me to say like how they can get in touch with me or something like that?
No, you're